Welcome to another episode of Love Living Local 315. We are your hosts, Scott and Kelly Greats, and we are thrilled today to welcome Kristy Mandour into the studio. Kristy is a nationally sought-after communication coach, emotional intelligence expert, and host of the So to Speak podcast, working with high-achieving, purpose-driven leaders to strengthen their mindset and create real impact. And maybe the best part, she's right here with us. She lives and works in central New York. Kristy Mandour, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, both of you.
So I want you to take us back to the moment that your daughter compared you to Maleficent. And how, that you said on your website that was your first anxiety attack.
It was my first, it was my first where it bubbled to the surface. We're so good about pushing it down,
Right.
don't come up. And
Yep. It was just there.
Yeah.
So how did that shift your internal narrative about yourself as a mother and a leader and the direction you want to go in?
Yeah, so we'll go back just so people can gain context. So my daughter, who's now 12, was probably about 4 when that happened. And so my son was 2. And I felt like I just had it down. I was at the stove, barefoot, stirring something in my mind. I was like domestic goddess, doing it all. And then
Still working and everything else.
And yeah, I was director of training and programs and doing a lot of public speaking and coaching and career coaching. I'm like, this is great, And then my daughter ran up very excited. So I'm saying that as the operative word because at the time I didn't sense her energy. Mm-hmm. It was just the outcome that I was focused on. If I focused on her energy, it would have been a different story, right? Mm-hmm. So she was really excited, and she said, "Mommy, look, it's you." And it was this huge Disney book, like the size of her body. And I was so sure she was going to show me Jasmine. I was like, "Oh, honey, you're so sweet."
That's great.
And she flips the book around, and it's Maleficent, black cloak, horns, and she was pointing. And I was like, I could feel like a quake. I literally
Your heart was racing.
And it's shaking. I remember being like, oh my gosh. Because in retrospect, I feel like I was feeling that way inside. I feel like I was trying to feel very controlled and very almost like I had an inner Maleficent telling me what to do, and I was keeping in line. And I hated that she saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm coaching women on what am I doing? I mean, it was a whole spiral.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, so to get back to your question, what did I learn? Well, it was immediate. I learned to reach out to good girlfriends immediately, especially when you feel like that's the last thing you want to do. Because I texted one of my dearest friends, whose name's also Kristy, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I sent a picture of the, book, and I said, that Veronica just ran up to me and told her the whole story. And she's like, well, I don't know about Veronica, but what I see is an incredibly fierce woman with a great sense of style. And I started crying. And I was just like, oh my God, I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And looking back, like I was saying, Veronica's energy was so buoyant. It was like, Mom, look, this is what I see. And I think it's really funny that everything is a mirror. So clearly I was looking at it as a negative because I was feeling that way in that moment. Like I'm trying to keep everything together and, I can get very split and feel like an octopus. And I said that to one of my friends and she said, we want to get you to feel like a mermaid. The irony that we were just talking about Ariel.
Yep, and Ursula for sure.
Yeah,
yep.
But Ariel, like a mermaid that isn't Ariel, like the mermaid that's just aligned and, just riding the waves and having fun and being able to focus and versus this feeling of feeling split like I feel many women feel. And I feel like men do too. I feel like men, that's a different conversation, but I feel like we give a lot to women, like doing it all, and then men have their own thing that we're not really highlighting,
Right.
Which we can talk about. But long story is that it's shining a light on, she's seeing all of my tentacles. She's seeing me trying to perfect everything. And it woke me up to realize I don't want her to be that person. Like, how can I be more of the person I want my kids to be? And it allowed perfectionism to start dwindling. It definitely comes up at times, but when I can say to myself, be the adult you want your kids to be, I'm actually way more like, oh, that's okay. I just am looser. Yeah. So that came after years. It wasn't in that moment, but.
Especially for daughters, when you have a daughter.
For sure.
Because
100%.
as a woman, as the mother, most times you are a role model, and you need to realize that they are watching and listening to everything that you're saying. So,
yeah. And men too. You know, that's something I feel like when it comes to being human, you know, gender aside, we have these gender roles that are put on us by our family of origin and by society and even on the playground and all the things. And it's really, that's one of the pieces of So to Speak that we really try to bridge is this idea of clear communication and humanity. Like you can be clear and you can be candid and you can be incredibly compassionate. And oftentimes people feel like it's one or the other. Like I can't be candid and be compassionate.
Right.
Or if I'm compassionate, then I'm going to be kind of walked over and I'm not going to be taken seriously. And we want to bridge that both pillars can be super strong. And we're actually craving that right now. We are craving truth. We are craving people to be with us fully. Attention is the hottest commodity ever right now. So, yeah. Yep.
There's a lot there, and there's a lot to your work. You get really deep into some really important topics, and you've already hit on a couple. And we'll get back to what you just hit on. But I want to go to, you talk about the mind is split between the critic and the champion. And this is something we all deal with, right? At some level, this idea of imposter syndrome, this idea of I'm not good enough or worthy enough or smart enough, the critic, right? So what are those first steps? And maybe it's different for everyone, but how do you start feeding the champion, bringing that out of you? Because we all have it.
Yeah. So the first is attention. You have to pay attention to it. And that's sometimes, I just had a conversation with a friend right in the parking lot before I walked in here, texting, who's going through a tricky time right now. And she's like, I just feel like a mess, to be honest. And I was like, well, honestly, that takes a lot of courage to admit. And that actually means you're speaking your truth to yourself. It's so easy for us to pull like the octopus and do all the things and have the arms flying around. And the critic is really, mine is Maleficent. That's one of mine. But like the critic is really the one that's like whipping at that point. And so it's paying attention so that you can hear what voice is talking when. And fortunately, living in upstate New York, especially right now, we have a stretch of gorgeous weather. And Kelly and I were talking when I was walking in. If you're living in upstate New York, I feel like it's a choice to embrace all seasons. I feel like it's very advantageous to embrace all seasons. Everybody has I should say some people have a tendency to go, oh, you know, we know what's on the other side of fall. And it's like, you know,
Why?
You can go that way. Because
just be present where you are right now.
But also, I always say, like, find something in the winter. And you don't have to be an outdoor person. I am. I love it. I don't care if it's freezing cold. I'll put Aquaphor all over my face and like nose, and I'm like, let's do it. I feel like there's something really fierce about that. But then also you can do something inside, like have the winter be something about, which does speak to the critic champion piece. It's like allow yourself an opportunity to go, I really love cooking, and I'm going to dedicate the winter to learning French cuisine. Then you have something to look forward to instead of dreading the dark skies. Or I'm going to write that book that I've been wanting to write, and I'm only going to write it in the winter. And it creates this sense of excitement around that. Like you can do stuff inside that you can dedicate to the winter so that you don't feel dreading it. And I feel like that's part of the attention piece, right? So oftentimes we can just get looped into wanting to be part of the tribe and wanting to follow what's happening in front of us. And our critic is telling us to do that a lot of times. Our champion is like I always say it's like under the tree with an apple. Like, I'm here when you need me. Like, put me in. I'm here. I'm not going to push you, but I'm always here for you. And the critic is so loud that it's trying to distract you from seeing the champion, who's always there and is like cool as can be. And when I say cool, I mean very authentically, down to earth, with integrity, not cool like I always compare it to John Travolta in Grease. Remember when he's playing basketball and he's like trying to play basketball and he's trying to be cool, and he looks like a total dork because he's trying to be cool. I feel like that's something that we oftentimes, what's happening inside of us when we're following what isn't true to us. So it's nature. This is why I looped in 4 seasons. It's attention to your thoughts. And that can happen through meditation, but it can also happen through, I always say, incorporate it into your life. We all have very busy lives, and we're all in different stages of our lives. If you're in upstate New York, chances are very high that you have a car. So when you're at a stoplight, look at that like a built-in timer. So when the light turns red, instead of staying in your head or, just cursing the person next to you for trying to cut you off or whatever it might be, just pause and look at the red light as a moment to go, all right, what's going on? Like, how you doing? What's happening? And then you might be like, I was just about to go get a coffee and I need no more coffee. Great. You listen to your body. Or why am I listening to the news still? I'm going to change, I want to put on one of my favorite songs. Great. You're taking back the reins, So it doesn't have to be like this huge on a mountain oming.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make is we think it has to be this huge moment or event, but the life can be figured out in 3 to 5 second pauses. Probably should be, right? And one thing I wrote down as you were talking is slow down. It's so hard in this day and age for us to pump the brakes and see things through a different lens. So it's difficult work, but that's why what you do and others is so important, because you can look at people through a different lens, like your friend, right, who says, I'm a mess, and you're like, fantastic. You acknowledged it, right? Because she probably wouldn't get there without that. He or she, I shouldn't assume gender. So yeah, the slow down and ask for help or guidance or
another
feedback.
It's okay to not be okay. Like, really ask yourself, and that's such
One of the
good
best Demi Lovato songs. I've heard,
It's okay to not be okay. And
So
I think it's hysterical that when we see people, like, one thing we say is, how are you? But really, they're not going to tell you how they are. I don't know.
And when they do, we get mad about it.
Anyway.
Or we were like, you know what I started doing with people? Instead of saying, how are you? If we're like passing, if we're at a coffee shop,
Right.
and it's like, I'll just say, hey, Scott, it's great to see you.
That's so
Period.
much better.
And I mean it, you
Right.
know? And I don't have to say, how are you is almost flippant. It's almost like a quick, hey, Scott, how are you? And then you're walking, you're like,
But you didn't even answer.
didn't even answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so. I gotta stop. I gotta stop saying that as well, because it's one thing that I hate when people that I don't even know, how are you? I'm like, I'm really not going to tell you how I am.
Have a seat.
wouldn't it be great if you did and you just saw the look on their
maybe I
face?
should try that the next time. I'll just unload on them and tell them exactly how I am.
I'll never get the question again.
Gosh. Okay, let's talk about the name of your podcast, So to Speak. It's such a powerful name. What's the story behind it?
So to Speak, so it's SOW, to speak, came from a marketing class that I had at Thinkubator 9 years ago, I can't remember now. And it was for founders and entrepreneurs. It was during the whole Simon Sinek craze of the, concentric circle, start with why. And it was very much focused on founders and entrepreneurs sowing what they want to speak in every. So I guess it was brand marketing before brand marketing was brand marketing, but it was very much like in every single way. If you're the core of a sun and you have all of these rays popping off, what's the core? And then everything comes off of those spokes, so that no matter who's talking about your company, they know, like, it doesn't matter what aspect of your company they're talking about, it all comes back to that one seed that you sowed. It also goes to like your why. That's a big piece. But then from the why comes your core values, comes your hiring decisions, your collaboration decisions, your brand colors, like everything comes from that. So that was the original. And then when I was working simultaneously at what is now Empowered Pathways, at the time it was Women's Employment and Resource Center. Before that, it was called the Displaced Homemakers Center, which is a horrible name. And it's all over the state. There's probably variations all over the country. And it helped women get back in the workforce. So we were working with women who were recently released from prison, who were widowed, divorced, separated, some who've just been out of the workforce for a long time. And so I was ran that one class at Thinkubator, and I was helping women gain confidence to go on job interviews. We did all the hard skills on Microsoft, sure, but it was really about like public speaking and how to present yourself with confidence. And when you've been out of the workforce, how do you come back feeling really not just authentic to who you are, but like you actually have value to give. A lot of that was severely eroded. And I was introducing them to TED Talks like Brene Brown before Brene Brown was big, Amy Cuddy before she was kind of spoken that power poses don't work, but I think there is some truth that they do. And they were so lit up, and they'd go on these interviews and they'd come back like I was more prepared than the interviewer. And it just got me thinking, I need to get into the companies. And I always considered myself a creative. So when I started business, there was a bit of a naivete to it. I was like, oh, this is fun. We're going to create a business. And first few years were a bit of a, I'm going to keep it G-rated.
Yeah, no, I can say. I'm thinking it for
you. Enough of a pause. And I named the company, so to speak. And then I had many different iterations. And it was still the same from the class, right? Like it was still like, how can we sow what we want to speak? And then it ended up really evolving to what it is now, which is that we work with high achieving leaders. We focus on visibility and presence with public speaking and communication so that you can be clear and compassionate. And then the podcast came from that. It came from, I should say, during COVID, I was like, let's start a podcast in my linen closet. And I did. And I love my linen closet.
It has a window.
It has a beautiful window. And then there's this gorgeous tree out front. And I was interviewing a lot of people locally because I wanted to keep them on the map, because a lot of them were brick and mortar and they were moving now online. And I wanted our community to remember them, but see them as human beings, number one. That was my first thing. Like, let's see the person behind the business. And so we would I remember I had Angela DeCarla. She was one of the first friends I had on. And I wanted everybody to feel like a fly on the wall. We were missing community. We were missing those like powwows on the floor in the living room. So I really wanted it to be casual. And I remember talking to Angela, and out my window, there was a balloon flying. And this was like deep in COVID when we were all kind of loony. And I remember I just stopped the middle of our conversation following the balloon. And I'm like, oh my God, all I'm thinking right now is that poor boy or girl who lost the balloon and that's all they wanted and they can't go to school. And she's like, I'm thinking about the sea turtles and how it's going to get into the water. And I left it in because I edit it. So I left it in because I was like, I would want to watch that.
People want to hear.
They want the truth.
Yeah.
Authenticity.
They want the truth.
Yes,
they
for
want
sure.
the truth. So I did that, and I again thought it was hilarious when I watched it back. And I had a friend reach out to me like, "Aren't you nervous that people are going to think you're not as credible as a business leader because of that?" And I was like, I don't want to work with those people. I want to work with the people who are like, "That's my girl. That's who I want beside me while I move through what can be really difficult territory when you go to uncover your authentic voice." There is a lot of stuff on top of it that is there for a protective reason. And you need someone next to you who has total unbiased, who's been called Maleficent by their daughter, who, was a little reckless and rebellious as a teen, who is not going to judge you for what you're going to say, and who can get to it, So to speak is all about reminding us that we are absolutely 100% in charge of sowing and planting what we truly not just want to speak verbally, but who we want to become as people.
All right, let's unpack that because that's present day, Kristy.
Yes.
Okay. That's not easy to get to. And the big shift for me came when, I don't want to say I stopped caring, because I do care. I care deeply, but stop worrying about the critics externally and then, of course, internally. But, who's going to be upset? Who's going to be offended if you're genuine, authentic, right? You talked about being naive when you started. How much of it was being naive? How much was it strategic when you said, hey, I don't care. I have a bigger purpose. I have a bigger mission. I need to help the people who see my value and want to work with me, that desire to go higher. How much of it was naive? How much of it was strategic? Or did you just kind of uncover that as you went?
I don't know if I thought about it. I like being able to reflect on that. I feel like anybody who's listening who labels themselves as a creative, I feel like we have a tendency to get pegged as like young, naive, innocent, all these things that are not looked at positively as you adult. And I feel like there is an envy there because the only people who are going to say that are people who are hyper responsible and almost envy that you can still do that or you have that. So this is a side note, but there's this delicate dance as a creative between holding on to that, because that's what makes the best creatives, and not succumbing to it, like actually being more mature and responsible and all the things. So I feel like it was a combination, but I feel the naive part was almost, in retrospect, I feel like it was almost a defense mechanism to be like, if this doesn't work, I can just say, oh, I just wung it. Or I was, there's something kind of, if I strategize, that means I have a whole theory that I've come to about strategy and focus. I think they're very intertwined. I feel that when you actually have a clear strategy and or focus, which are, kind of weave together, it's riskier because you actually are choosing a path. It's easier to go, I'm just so confused, or I don't know, or I'm just not clear, or I'm overwhelmed, because it's a defense mechanism in a way for you not to get focused. Because when you get focused, two things. One is, like I was saying, the risks are higher because you're choosing a lane. That's why when creatives have a lot of different projects, it's like, well, I have this going on. Pick a lane. Chase Jarvis, if you're familiar with him, he's a phenomenal photographer. He started that way. Then he created a company called Creative Live. He's a huge proponent of creatives. And he wrote a book called The Creative Calling, and he talks about that in it. Like, sometimes creatives choose a lot of different things so that if one fails, they don't feel as heartbroken. But he's like, I say go all in. Like, go all in, have faith with it. So the focus piece, I feel, came a little bit later once I moved through the fact that you don't have to be who's labeled you. I feel like I was labeled that for a long time, and you just start, it's almost like be careful of the expectations put on you because you'll meet them. So I feel questioning what your labels are, I think, is super important to be able to do anything. But in this case, to be able to get to truly what my why was with, so to speak. I feel like I at first was trying to do what I thought people wanted, and I wasn't doing what I truly knew in my heart I wanted to do. And then I feel I started getting nervous. What if I do more of what I want to do? Is it really needed? And that's when I felt like I was evolving while, so to speak, was evolving. And I realized if what I really, truly want to do is like lighting me up, there is a place here somewhere in the world for it, because it wouldn't be lighting me up if it wasn't the case.
That got personal for me.
Yeah.
I know you were thinking it when she was saying it.
I know.
I'm the creative who has a million things going on. Yeah. So if
and
half of them don't work, I can.
love that you said that, because so many times I'm like, you need to simplify. Simplify doesn't mean don't work as hard. It means what are you the most passionate about? Because if you have 5 different things and ideas, and you're trying to work on all 5 of those ideas, you're not doing justice to that one great or 2 great ideas. I would never limit you to just one. I would be okay with 2. But literally, he is like, in a week, at least 15 things get proposed, or I've got an idea, or what about this?
We're having a Maleficent moment.
I am telling you. So I'm so glad that you need to hone him in.
But the horns look so good on Kelly.
I am definitely the happy. If you ask our kids when they get in trouble, my son got in trouble in high school, and they brought him into the principal's office, and Scott got the phone call, and I didn't. And then afterwards, like, they hung up the phone, and it wasn't really bad, but it was a bad choice he made. And they said, why didn't you call your mom? And he goes, oh my God, she would have killed me. Like, for sure. I am definitely, that's so
I don't
funny.
see anything wrong with, and I've also come to love Maleficent. If you see Maleficent, the movie, you'll realize that she is fierce, and she's protective, and she's a hell of a mother. And so I always say I'm going to polish my horns. Like, whenever
that's like
I'm
Wicked. If you go see Wicked, there's a reason that some of us are a little
100%.
Yeah, a little
100%.
Okay. So all right. Let's talk about one thing that I love is what does rehumanizing the workforce mean to you? That is so important right now with AI and everything else that's out there. I want to do business or with a human that I know a story about or that I can relate to. So I think that's so important. Some leaders don't realize that, or even like people that work for them. If you have to have people that work for your company, isn't it so important that your employees see you as a human and can relate to you? And so how do you do that? What are some of the things that you do to help leaders, like you said, stay true to their passion, but also be an effective leader?
And it sounds like relatable.
Yes.
That's what you're saying too. Well, it also is, to be honest, that some leaders don't care. They don't care to do that, which I don't think is a problem. I feel like that's just great. There are definitely other people there who can support you in your goals. My focus is mainly with people who tend to be perfectionistic, high achieving, incredibly almost to a fault, hyper-functioning givers, where they have been labeled givers so much that they feel like they can't not give, because then it's like an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So then it messes up their leadership, because then they don't delegate. So then they don't bring out the value of the team. And then they start resenting the team because they always have to do all the things. And it becomes like a knot of yarn. That's what I would say. I don't look at it as toxic. I think toxic is more the other leader who doesn't care and is like AI. I think there's room for both. I'm not going to get so much into AI. It's not my wheelhouse, but I do feel there's room for both for sure. And I feel that I always say it's like artificial intelligence and authentic intelligence. That's what we need to merge.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the leaders I work with, it's the leaders who are incredibly ambitious and they want to change the world, and they also are competitive, and they're also compassionate, and they are wanting to have a team, but they have like an internal tug of war between the part of them that's saying you have to handle it all, and then the part of them that's saying, but if you handle it all, it's all going to fall apart. But you have to handle it all. But if you and they don't know what to do. So I'm there to help them, like, drop the rope, turn this way. There's actually a whole other map of opportunities and options, and that is where it starts. So to answer your question, it's rehumanizing yourself first. It's self-leadership before external leadership. We always say it's, leadership starts in the body, not the boardroom, so to speak. That's one of our pillars, is this idea of listen into your body before you go to your mind. And that's how you rehumanize yourself. It's very, Deepak Chopra talks about we're human beings, not human doings. And so this idea of like, again, it doesn't have to be this like bee, and you don't have to get into patchouli and do all the things and take ayahuasca in the desert with Matthew McConaughey. But
which doesn't sound like the worst idea.
You could, and you could hold a baby cub like he did, a little tiger cub. But if that's not your thing, what you could do is, I am biased to getting a coach for this, because I think you need someone to hold you there energetically so that you don't run away, because it is very unnerving to face things that you haven't faced for a reason. And I always bring humor into it. I think that's crucial. I bring science and humor. Science is what gets people to go, okay, I can get behind this. And humor is what allows them to stay, right? So it's like the hostess who opens the doors, the science, and then the humor is the ones like, hey, come in, let's have a drink.
Yeah. You have a unique skill set, with that, right? Most people are one side or the other of the brain. Like you're a creative, but you're also, really good at the execution of things. You have this like fun personality, but then I can also tell you're stern when you need to be, right? So what makes you, I know we've talked about a lot of it, but what makes you different, right? If listeners were to take away one or two key points on why they should work with you, what makes you different, and what would they gain from it that they may not get with your traditional coaching?
Well, the first is, yes, it's very non-traditional. And the difference is that it's very whole-brained. So right to your point, a lot of coaching is very left-brained, and it's very strategic, and it's very almost like consulting, which consulting and coaching is not the same at all. Coaching is much more sit back, ask questions, allow yourself to come up with the questions. You know, a coach's job is really to hold space. It's an overused phrase in our industry, but it is. It's to hold space so that you can feel safe enough to say what is popping up instead of pushing it back down. And traditional coaching tends to be much more corporate. I think your listeners know enough to get that. I de-woo intuition. That's the other thing I say. At the end of the day, it's all about listening to your intuition strategically. Yet you need to listen to your intuition first. It's like Einstein said something like, we've been trained to listen to the servant, not the leader, when really the leaders are he said it much better than that. But basically he said, we want to listen to the leader, which is our intuition, and our mind is the servant to follow that, not the other way around. So you can get super woo with intuition. I don't get super woo with intuition. I feel like intuition is there as a, it's like you're opening a map and you're like, where am I? I'm here. Where do I want to be? Your intuition is going to speak first. Your mind may try to take you one way, but to follow your intuition, then you get a strategy to follow it. And I don't think anyone has ever gone wrong listening to their intuition. So those are the big differences. And the other is that they're going to leave with a totally transformed voice that they feel free. Like my favorite thing after I've worked with people when we do customary feedback, and we also do verbal feedback with them to gain insight on what they learned. And I always say, like, what's one word if you could encapsulate the whole thing? And it's either liberation or freedom. And I'm like, done. That's amazing. Like, you're free. You feel free. Now it's about practicing what they receive all the time. There's a lot of nervous system regulation involved before we do anything with speaking, because that's the number one thing that we look past. We think it's very up here, but it's actually regulating our nervous system before we speak.
How do you do that?
There's so many.
That's a big question.
To count the
Because
ways.
public speaking is like the number one fear, isn't it?
Death, and then public speaking too.
Death and public speaking is second. I knew it was
Public
right up there.
speaking beats death.
Oh, does it?
I think
Oh,
it's not.
yeah.
And I
The
knew it
latest
was up
data
there
is
because people get so. I mean, I was a teacher, and I could stand in front of a group of kids and talk and teach all day and lead them and tell them what they were supposed to do. And then once I had to present to my colleagues, I was a mess. Or
Different
if I knew my
beast.
principal was coming in to observe
totally.
me, like how do you do that? What are some things that you can do to regulate your nervous system before you get up there and you're like,
Yeah, I'll share a few. I do want to say Jerry Seinfeld, we may have talked about this, Scott, when you and I spoke last time. He said something really funny. He said, because of the public speaking being a bigger fear than death, he said, so basically people would rather die than give their eulogy at their funeral. Okay. So nervous system regulation is big. There are many people who go deep in it. I, again, want it to be relatable. I want it to be something that you're going to integrate into your life, and you don't have to look at it like one more thing to do. So that's why before when I used the stoplight, that's one.
I don't have to go to a retreat to
That's
do
one.
this. I don't
You
have to
could go to a retreat. I want people to feel you don't have to. Like a retreat is a bonus. And again, that's your intuition.
Yep.
Like trust your intuition. Don't think that you have to do that because someone on Instagram or LinkedIn or whoever said it. Like just, okay. There's nothing more freeing than listening to your intuition. You feel like this alignment. It physically feels like a sensation, like, oh, wow, that was cool. That was amazing. So the first would be to get used to being in your body and not your head. What I mean by that is we're in our head so often that people, when I say like, well, how are you feeling? Like, I have no idea. I feel good, or I have no idea. I'm like, well, good isn't a feeling. And you not knowing is great, because now we can start checking in and noticing. And one of the first things I say is you just notice by noticing what your body's doing. So most of us are tight and forward facing because we're ready. And so we're in a fight or flight mode all the time. We're in this hyper functioning mode. So what Scott just did, for anybody listening, he just sat back.
and relaxed.
He just sat back. I don't know if he's relaxed. Are you more relaxed, Scott?
I did that because I watched your latest video.
Did you really do that
I
just
really
now?
did.
See?
Yeah. See?
I knew
Just
you
to-
watched it, but I didn't know. Yeah. Did it work? Well, did it work?
I love it because so for the listeners, right? Like a lot of times I'll focus on posture. I lean in. I'm trying to maintain eye contact, be present, think about what you're saying, what I'm going to say next. And to Kristy's point is sometimes you just have to lean back.
So
and
Scott's
allow
literally
yourself.
leaning back. So
Yeah.
that's the point. So, and also the operative word there was trying, like trying to maintain eye contact, trying to be present, trying. When you lean back, and there is a time and a place to lean forward. I'm going to shelve that right now. When you lean back, you're telling your nervous system, it's okay. You actually can be here and you don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready for the question or the answer. Because what's really going through your head, if I was in that position, because I'm in the position as the guest on the show, it could be like, I want to be so ready and I want to make sure that I answer this great. And I'm so nervous about people listening and watching. And so all of that could be going through my mind, leaning forward. Like, Kelly's going to ask me a question. I don't even know what it, like, all of that could be. And just by leaning back, I can physically feel my body. Are you hating that I'm moving back and forth through the mic? Okay. So you can literally feel yourself drop your shoulders. I can feel my heart open a little bit. I feel my butt on the seat. And so now I'm more in my body. So I don't need to try to make eye contact with you. I don't need to try to be present. I feel safe enough to answer, and it takes practice. So here's the biggest thing I want to say. When people are public speaking, when people are interviewing, and it's like, I walked in and Kelly's like, yeah, you seem so chill about it. It's practice. I've done this so many times, and I was a mess before. I'd be so wound. I drank a cup and a half of regular coffee before this, and I never would do that. I would drink chamomile tea or only drink hot water with lemon because I was so wired high that I would be frenetic. I would be all over the place, and then I would listen to it with like one eye open, like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. And I just, and then your critic comes through. So it really is practice. So that's why I say when it comes to being in your car, when it comes to taking 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, people are like, we have this warped idea that if we take 5 minutes, we're not doing enough, especially high achievers. And that's total bullshit. It's the productivity side of it is that you are taking 5 minutes. That is the most productive thing you can do for yourself and for your family. So when before my kids come home, when my transition ritual from work to mom mode is I take, especially in the winter, I look so forward to it. I turn on the fire and I sit with a cup of tea and I just sip tea and zone out for 5 minutes. And then I hear the bus come in. I've tried it different ways. I'm just going to get one more email in, and then I turn in Maleficent to myself and the kids. Like, don't interrupt, or like, what's his name, Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Like, don't interrupt me when I'm writing.
Yeah.
It is so funny. I put myself in timeout all the time.
Yes.
And Jenna's friends walk in and they'll be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm giving myself a timeout." Like,
I don't think that's spoken about enough. The
That's so
transition,
helpful.
Yeah.
right? Because we are just one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and we need to give, to use your phrase, space, right? To end what was just happening before we begin the next thing, and just even if it's a minute or two of space.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
So 30 seconds is sometimes all it takes for you to just take 2 deep breaths, and it's overused. It does work though, like 2 conscious deep breaths for you to then shift, and you're shifting into a new
it is so funny that you
situation.
say that, because when they're kids, we realize as parents, as educators, as anybody, that you need to give kids time to transition from one thing to the next. But then when we're adults, all of a sudden we lose that. We don't get that opportunity to transition from our work day to our mother, to being a mother, or even being like a daughter. There's times that I have to go, and help my mom out with certain things. And I think if you're right, if I just took a moment for myself in between all of those things I was trying to do, it would allow me to be better at that one thing that I'm trying to do.
Tell yourself it's okay. I'm such a huge proponent. For some people, it's too soft, but hands on your heart, like It gets you in your body, and it's just, you're doing awesome. Like, just take a second.
It is
Like
so
the
funny
same
you
thing
say
you would
that.
say to other people, because we have to give ourselves that, because our kids, one of the most jarring and beautiful and like moments is Dr. Eliza Pressman is the host of Raising Good Humans. And she was on my podcast a few years ago when she was promoting a book that she has out now. And I wish I knew the name of it so I could give her a shout out, but Dr. Eliza Pressman. And she said, our kids hear the voice we say to ourselves more than they hear what we say to them. And I was like, oh God, like, you know, and it's not always horrible. I actually had a horrible inner critic in my 20s and 30s. But after that, I was like, oh, it actually isn't that bad. And I still want them to hear, I want to hear in my head what I'd want them to hear. So the last thing I'll say, just to wrap it for people to understand, is just to, again, bring the humor is one of the biggest visuals to help you stay the course is I always think of the Friends episode, the one where they're getting ready for a wedding and Joey comes in with all of Chandler's clothes on. Do you remember that episode? And he busts through Monica and Rachel's apartment, and he literally has every article of Chandler's clothes on because they were fighting about something.
They were trying to be bigger or something. How many articles of clothing you can put on? Yes, I remember this
and
episode.
then he starts doing lunges.
Yep.
Commando.
Yep.
And he's like, could I be wearing any more clothes? And I always joke that Joey is us. Like, we're cloaked in other people's thoughts. And if we could just start taking off one article, we'll realize, like, my God, no wonder I feel lighter and freer and more myself, because I don't have my like great grandmother's thoughts, who I didn't even know that's transgenerationally in me. Oh my gosh. And I can still love her, and I can still be part of the tribe without feeling like I'm being disloyal, and be true to myself. And this person and that person, we start flinging clothes, and all of a sudden we're like, I feel so much better because I'm getting truer to my own authentic voice. So Friends help, the episodes, and you're real friends.
We came full circle on that one.
Yeah, we came full circle.
Friends talk, yeah. Two really quick things. So with the breathing, this has helped me a ton. Count internally, like as you breathe in, 1, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, and then out, 2, 3. And what you're doing when you're counting is you're forcing yourself to not be where you were, because now you're just focused on breath and counting, right?
Great.
And then Penny Zenker, if you remember, she was a guest on the podcast, and right before we started, she had this little bottle of something, I didn't know what it was, and she took a sniff of it. I'm like, whoa, like, what's that, right? I'm curious. And she's like, oh, it's just it's an essential oil, like it's lavender or whatever, doesn't matter which one. And she said it allows my body, my nervous system, to reset. So before I shift from one thing to the next, I'll just sniff an essential oil, and it lets my nervous system know that it's time to move into something else. So 2 little hacks. This morning, Kelly said, we're going to keep this one short because we're doing back-to-back podcasts.
This is our jam,
and I
for sure.
smirked, and I'm like,
we spoke for about 20 minutes before we started.
Kelly
this
hadn't
too.
met Kristy, and I'm like, this isn't going to be short. and I don't mean that in a bad way. It was just you have so much, you have a depth to you, and it's awesome to hear.
It's relatable. Like so many things
so
you
important.
say. Like, yeah.
All right, well, let's try to be quick. These are our rapid fires.
Okay.
Oh, yay. Okay.
So, yeah,
Here we go.
We didn't really get too much local stuff, but let's do it. Let's get into some local stuff.
What's your favorite local spot to relax, recharge, or get inspired?
My backyard.
Any local traditions or events that you and your family look forward to each year?
I love all the events they do in Clinton. I think it's very Norman Rockwell idyllic space there too. My kids love going to the feasts down in Utica. They go with their dad. And we have, family traditions when friends come back to town. And then when the friends come back who don't live here, they always want to, get like the hodgepodge of local food. And I'm not going to give any shout outs for food because there's too
can't.
many.
Yeah,
We've eliminated that question because to ask people to pick, it's
They're
just
very
too hard.
good. And I will say my favorite restaurant is my parents' kitchen.
We get that a lot.
Yeah. Like straight up.
Yeah.
My son hurt my heart the other day when he came home. Remember when Connor came home and I said, how's the food? And he goes, it's almost as good as Fisher's dining hall. He goes, Mom, I'm just kidding. I was like, what? No. How do you stay connected to community while still managing a national presence?
I have fantastic girlfriends, and they keep me rooted, and they help me, and it's quality over quantity, hands down. And they not just keep me rooted, but they make me reinvigorated about being planted here and loving it.
Girlfriends for women, it's just so important. You need people to help you succeed, not keep you from succeeding. And I think we deal with that a lot in like high school and the cattiness. And it's just so important as adults that we have women
agree. And I never had, I know there are a lot of women who are like, oh, when women get together, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad that you've had that experience.
Exactly.
I have never had that experience.
I feel so bad you're hanging out with those women. Don't hang out with them.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. We'll come back. We'll have another podcast.
Okay.
Talking about
I think that's the sweater. We'll do that during the sweater weather.
Yeah.
Put on a turtleneck. Tell me more about that. Hidden gem in the 315 that do you think more people should know about?
Oh my gosh, it doesn't have to defeat the purpose.
Well, we'll see. We're going to test how many people are listening right now.
I will give you one of my true ones. I was trying to think quickly of like mental Rolodex. Like give one that's like third or fourth. I'm going to give you one of my top. Kirkland Town Park up in Clinton has behind the old playground, like they have an old metal playground that my kids still go on the seesaw, and I have a heart attack every time. I'm like, oh my God. They have this creek down below that nobody ever goes to. There are minimal people there. And I bring my kids there all the time. And we skip stones and just kind of wade in the water. And this year, because of all the rain, there was a man-made stone area that was kind of like curved that looked like a hot spring, but it wasn't a hot spring. And my friend and I, in our 40s and 50s, took tubes and just sat in it like we were in Texas and just waded in it. And rare people know about it. Like when I bring people there, they're like,
I would have loved to see you guys walking through the park with blown up tubes to get in the creek.
And when we were there and like families would go by, they see these middle-aged women and all of them were beaming. Like, it was such a great surprise. We're like, hello.
It all comes back to good friends, right?
That's great. Do you have a dream venue to speak at?
South by Southwest in Austin.
Gotta have Graz. Yeah. Hook her up. Piece of advice. You have 2 children. Piece of advice you'd love for them to have and never forget. And I know that's like super difficult.
One piece of advice that I would say today in this moment is I would love for them to, I feel like it's so cliche, but just to consistently come back to themselves. I keep hearing, I think it's Macbeth. I have this little plaque from my grandmother she used to have in her kitchen, and it says, to thy own self be true, and then thou can't be false to any other man.
That's a great place to end. And listen, cliches are cliche.
For a reason.
Yeah, because they make sense.
Yeah.
So, Kristy Mandour, so to speak, this has been a blast. I think we were about an hour. Not bad for a 30-minute goal.
Yeah. Time flies.
We're twice as good as our goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. It was so fun.